I've always been a bit of a road tripper. Something about the endless stretches of asphalt, the little forgotten towns, and the freedom of the open road just calls to me. But after what happened in that dusty motel in Nevada, I am not sure I'll ever be able to look at a rearview mirror the same way again, let alone a motel room mirror. It was late, probably pushing 2 a.m. I'd been driving for what felt like an eternity, the only light for miles being my own headlights cutting through the inky blackness of the desert. Finally, I saw it, a flickering neon sign that read Oasis Motel. It wasn't much, just a handful of rooms clustered around a gravel lot, but it was better than sleeping in my car. I checked in, got my key from a sleepy-eyed clerk who barely looked up from his crossword puzzle, and trudged to my room. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Worn-out carpet, a lumpy bed with a questionable floral comforter, and the faint smell of stale cigarette smoke and cleaning supplies. I was so exhausted, I barely noticed. I dropped my bag on the floor and headed straight for the small, attached bathroom. All I wanted was to wash the grime of the road off my face and collapse into bed. The bathroom was tiny, with peeling wallpaper and a single, buzzing fluorescent light overhead that cast long, unsettling shadows. I turned on the tap, the pipes groaning in protest, and splashed cold water on my face. It was a relief, a jolt of cold that snapped me a little more awake. I let the water run over my hands for a moment, then reached for the thin, scratchy towel hanging by the sink. As I dried my face, I finally looked up into the mirror, and that's when my heart stopped. My reflection was still there, but it was just staring. Its face was still dripping with water, its eyes fixed on something just over my shoulder. I stood there, towel in hand, completely frozen. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Was I that tired? Was this some kind of waking dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and too much caffeine? I blinked, hard. Nothing changed. My reflection remained, perfectly still, water droplets tracing slow paths down its cheeks. My own face was now dry. I could feel the rough texture of the towel against my skin. Slowly, cautiously, I took a small step back, away from the sink. My reflection didn't move. It just stayed there, leaning over the sink, its image unblinking, unmoving, as if it were a photograph pasted onto the glass. A cold dread, colder than the tap water, began to creep up my spine. My breathing became shallow. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that this was impossible, that mirrors don't just stop working. I took another step back, my back hitting the cool tile of the shower wall. I was a good 5 feet from the mirror now, but my reflection, it was still there, leaning forward, its hands braced on the edges of the sink. It was me, but it wasn't. It was a static, horrifying echo. And then, it smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was slow, deliberate, a grotesque stretching of the lips that didn't reach the eyes. The eyes, my eyes, remained wide and vacant, fixed on that point behind me. My blood turned to ice. My own mouth was hanging open in a silent scream. But the face in the mirror was grinning, a chilling, predatory grin. As I watched, paralyzed with a fear I have no words to describe, the reflection slowly began to raise its right hand. The movement was fluid, graceful, a stark contrast to its frozen posture just moments before. It lifted its hand, palm open, as if to wave, or to reach for something. My own arms were pinned to my sides. I couldn't move them. I couldn't move anything. I was trapped a spectator in my own horror story, watching this. This thing that wore my face, mocked me from another dimension. Then, the single fluorescent light above me began to flicker. On, off, on, off. Each flash of light was like a strobe, capturing a new, terrifying snapshot. In one flash, the smile was wider. In the next, the hand was higher. The buzzing sound of the failing light fixture filled the small room, a frantic electric pulse that matched the frantic, terrified beating of my own heart. The flickering got faster, more erratic. Darkness, light, darkness, light. My mind couldn't keep up. It was a dizzying, nauseating assault on the senses. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The room was plunged into absolute, total darkness. The buzzing sound was gone. All I could hear was the frantic pounding in my ears and my own ragged, panicked breaths. I stood there in the suffocating blackness, not daring to move, not daring to breathe. Every nerve in my body was screaming. How long I stood there, I don't know. It could have been seconds. It could have been minutes. It felt like an eternity. With a final, violent sputter, the light flickered back on and stayed on, bathing the room in its sickly yellow-white glow. I squeezed my eyes shut, afraid of what I would see when I opened them. I took a deep, shaky breath, and forced myself to look. The mirror was empty. Not just empty of the horrifying reflection, but empty of my own. I was standing there, staring at the mirror, but there was no image of me staring back. It was just a clear, silvered surface reflecting the peeling wallpaper and the dingy shower curtain behind me. I wasn't there. It was as if I had become invisible. Panic, raw and undiluted, finally broke through my paralysis. I stumbled backward, fumbling for the doorknob, my eyes still locked on the empty mirror. My hand closed around the cold metal, and I twisted, pulling the door open and scrambling out of the bathroom. I didn't stop. I ran out of the motel room, leaving the door wide open. I didn't grab my bag, my keys, or my wallet. I just ran. I sprinted across the gravel lot, jumped into my car, and slammed the door, locking it. My hands were shaking so violently it took me 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into reverse, peeling out of the parking spot with a spray of gravel. As I sped out of the Oasis Motel and back onto the desolate highway, something made me glance at the rearview mirror, and that's when I felt it. A cold puff of air on the back of my neck, like a whisper, like breath.